Welcome to the Foothills, a Colorado lifestyle and real estate podcast featuring mountain home real estate broker Robert Martin, who has over 25 years of experience assisting clients reach their goals and move forward. Tune in each week for a dynamic conversation with experts, Colorado adventurers, and residents that explores the ins, outs, and specific nuances of buying the perfect mountain home or selling your dream home in Evergreen, Conifer, Bailey, and surrounding areas to catch a glimpse into the Colorado lifestyle that's a part of you.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, our guest is David Woodbury. David, how are you today?
Good, Robert. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. I appreciate you taking time today. Tell me about yourself and your background. I know you're a veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard, a founder of Edge Wireless, which was acquired and I assume sold at some point. So business acumen in the past. And what do you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur, I guess, for a little over a decade. I guess going on 14 years now. You know, as you mentioned, I was in the wireless industry. That business was acquired. Decided I didn't want to work in retail anymore, so reinvented my skill set and started a digital marketing agency. We ended up working with a bunch of the big tech accelerators like Techstars, who you may know of. They're based out of Boulder, Colorado, and Generator, actually Telluride Venture Accelerator out in Telluride, Colorado. So yeah, worked with a few different companies in the Colorado area. And then from there started my own startup, Camp Native, and that's a booking engine for campgrounds and RV parks all over the U.S. We serve about 800 properties. And through that process, that was back in 2015, through that process, I would say a couple of years ago, I became interested in crypto, mostly just as an investor, trading a bit of crypto here or there. And really became interested in all the different business structures. And as COVID hit with inflation and the money printing, the situation that was going on, looking at, are there more applications for crypto? So as I researched it, I really sort of fell in love with Web3. That's like the next version of the internet that's being built on the blockchain. And so I ended up becoming a consultant for the state of South Dakota on Web3. And what they had me do is 6 different live presentations across the state with small business owners and entrepreneurs. And then another accelerator picked me up and I did a corporate innovation summit series on crypto and Web3. And this is maybe going into the beginning of this year, 2022. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm telling all these businesses how to utilize Web3 with their existing business model. And I've got this business right now, and I wonder how I could apply it. And so that's really how Yak was born, is figuring out a way that we could utilize blockchain in order to create an amazing glamping experience. So what we're doing is we're acquiring real estate, recreational use real estate in rural outdoors locations. And then we're developing a glamping resort, and we're funding it through fractional ownership by NFTs. So that's kind of the 10,000 foot view.
Just to take a step back, what is the difference, David, between the internet now and Web3? What are the real clear differences? I know being built on the blockchain, what will the advantages be?
Yeah, so I guess, to simplify it, and I like to use a couple of analogies. So today, if you invest, a lot of people have a Facebook account, for example, and you've invested a lot of time and energy into creating Facebook, and you've got photos on there and content that you've created over the years. And if you decided, I don't really like Facebook anymore, and I want to go somewhere else, the reality is Facebook owns all that data that you've created, and you own none of it. You're basically, what you're doing is you're essentially renting digital real estate from Facebook in exchange for them being able to monetize your information via advertising, which is their business model. So the difference with Web3 is that you own the digital assets. So for example, if you created if a Web3 social media company came out like Facebook, you would actually own your profile. And if you chose to leave that organization, you could just take your entire footprint and move it to another organization. So it's, I would say a good way to think about it is like owned digital real estate versus previously it's, we have kind of like a user-driven rented model of digital real estate. So we have these big giant tech platforms that sort of own everybody's information. And
So
Web3 is really bringing that to the user.
okay. So we create that information on Facebook and other platforms. It's used by them. Once, if we leave Facebook, we can't take it with us. With a new Web3, that digital platform or that real estate, as you call it, can be taken wherever or just held onto, and basically it's yours.
Correct. Yeah. So it's real simply, it's individual digital ownership or individual ownership of digital assets.
Okay.
You can think about it like owning a piece of real estate, but it's online.
Okay. And as we chatted briefly before the podcast, most folks my vintage are trying to wrap our minds around all of this. So I appreciate you taking me through it kind of slow here. So how did you come up with Yakto, and what is a decentralized autonomous organization?
So I came up with the Yakto based on, I was explaining, doing a lot of research in Web3 and how it could apply to the industry that I have some experience in. And the reason I'm using it as the mechanism is to develop a glamping resort. It's a multi-million-dollar investment strategy. And there's plenty of investors, traditional investors, that are interested in this. But what I thought was really interesting is being able to sort of democratize it. So you don't have to have $1 million to invest and own a piece of a cash flowing, revenue generating asset. And I guess that kind of segues into what a DAO is. Decentralized autonomous organization. And the best way to think about a DAO is it's like you're launching a publicly traded company, but right out of the gates. So versus, when you IPO, there's a board of directors and there's obviously management in place, but the ownership of the company is public, where you have shares essentially. DAOs don't utilize shares, but they utilize voting mechanisms by tokens or by NFTs in our case. And so those voting mechanisms enable the users to really drive change and drive the vision of the organization. So it's just a more democratic way to build an organization, and you can kind of do it from ground zero. And that's why we did what we did, because we can fractionalize. We can basically, you could own 1/50th of a dome through our platform, whereas doing that in the traditional route, it would be pretty challenging with all the regulations around investors and whatnot.
Well, the concept certainly makes sense. Having a place to go to enjoy the outdoors. It's just the way that you go about with laying it out, or not having a public company or with an IPO, and the way that it is monetized is a different concept. Not for someone like you, but for like I said, folks in my age bracket. So to get an understanding of things. So you talked about Dome. So Dome, basically what your intent is to have, let's say, a piece of property where you have domes, different types of domes, some that are more luxurious than others, like glamping type facilities, or some that are maybe a little more rugged. How does all of that work? And how does the Yakto work in combining all of that idea and that concept?
Our history so far is we conducted a pre-raise, I would say. So we raised right around $300,000 of USD, and we sold that out very quickly back in June. And since then, we've been busy.
USD, is that United States dollars, or what is?
Yes, yeah, sorry. In crypto, we have to clarify what we raised in.
Sounds good. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so in US dollars, and so we raised 300 right around that. And so the raise comes in as Ethereum, and then you convert it over to US dollars is the way it works.
Okay.
So with those resources, we've been building out community, our smart contracts, and sort of how all this is going to work. But in addition to that, we put a down payment, and we're under contract with 22 acres in Brevard, North Carolina. So that'll be where our first property is actually based. We are looking in the Denver, Colorado area as well to develop a property there. Our vision is to have multiple properties across the world. But how it works is, the domes themselves, they're really driven by the community and like how much you want to invest into your dome. So we're going to basically present costs to the community, and the community then decides, I want a bathroom facility in my dome, or I want higher end upgrades. And each, the obviously booking revenues and all that are going to correlate directly to what you invest into your particular dome structure. But for the most part, they'll be pretty similar. Like the decking, every dome has a decking structure. There's going to be a central bathhouse and community kitchen. This is specific to the Brevard property, but I would see the scaling for most properties across the board. We're putting a pool in, hot tub, steam shower. So it'll have kind of a spa effect to it. And then this property has a private pond, swimming pond, and fishing pond on the property. So that's kind of a unique aspect as well. And then all of our properties, we really want direct access to outdoors experiences. This is a mile away from Blue Ribbon Trout Stream, and a couple miles away from 150 miles of mountain biking. Brevard's kind of known on the East Coast as like the Moab of the East Coast. So it's a big mountain biking area. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for whatever it is people like to do outdoors, whether it's fly fishing or mountain biking or hiking. So they could actually own their own dome or own a portion of their dome. And then would that equate to then an opportunity to spend a certain amount of time there in like days that they could use it? I know you can lease those as well, or have some sort of a share in ownership. And
so the DAO has a business model, and because we don't want, the members are basically completely turnkey. You don't manage your dome, you don't need to manage the bookings. The DAO does that, and so the DAO charges 18% property management fee of all booking revenue that comes in onto the property. In addition, the DAO is going to invest in a handful of its own domes, just to generate some added revenue. There's going to be on-site property management. And then as far as when you want to stay there, if you own the dome outright, you can manage the calendar. So if you had purchased a dome and you customized it, you can manage the calendar and you can stay there whenever you want. And the DAO will rent it out whenever you decide that you don't want to stay. If you own a fraction of a dome, the only fair way to do this, because we didn't want to sell it as like a timeshare or weeks, we wanted it to be, and mostly it's because weeks are, especially in seasonal rental business, there's certain weeks of the year, for example, in Colorado, like April is much less favorable than, say, ski season or summer months. And so we wanted to make sure that, like, if you owned a piece of it, you shared in the ups and the downs of the market, and that way that everybody had a consistent engagement with the DAO. So if you do choose to stay as a fractional owner, you book it, but you book it at a discount. So it's a 10% discount off the rate.
Okay. So benefits at different levels of ownership. The property that you have under contract, David, so you're purchasing that with US dollars. Then once you close, you do your due diligence, everything works out, you'll proceed with putting some domes on the property, that sort of thing. So if I was interested in participating, I have ownership through an NFT, and I'm pretty raw on that. So what are NFTs and how do they work? I know it stands for non-fungible token. And what do you think of the future of the memberships look like for you guys?
So yeah, our NFTs are going to be sold on OpenSea. So anybody can go to OpenSea on September 8th. That's when we launch our Yak membership NFTs. There's 3 levels of membership ownership via NFTs. The first and top level is called our Mauna Kea Yaks, and those are the most expensive. They're 2.5 ETH is for those of you that aren't familiar with the price of ETH, it's they're around $5,000 US dollars. But that membership is
so first 1 Ethereum coin then is what you're referencing there.
2.5 Ethereum coins.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. 1.5. I think it's around 1,500 now, something like that for one. So.
Yeah. So then it would be,
okay. Gotcha. Okay.
4,000 and change, something like that. So What that tier gets you is all the benefits of the lower two tiers, but really first right of refusal on all investment in the future, and sort of like voting rights on the DAO, biggest amount of voting rights. So we really have that positioned to folks that want to own a dome, they want to own some real estate this way. We've been able to actually pre-sell 7 domes this way already at the Brevard property. So we definitely know there's demand, like especially in the crypto audience. I think it'll take a little more, it's just going to take time for adoption on the other side, traditional side of it. But we have enough of these conversations, we'll get one or two people interested. So, yeah. But then I guess to explain the NFT piece, like what that is. So yeah, non-fungible token, it's kind of a fancy terminology, but really all it is again, it's the mechanism that is Web3. So it's the token that represents your ownership of something on the internet. And why this is valuable to do it this way is that I think how it could, like the future of this, like it could reinvent. So if we look at real estate in general, there's a fair amount of middleman markup within that industry, from the agent side to the broker side to the financing side to the titling side of properties. A lot of things, I'm not saying everything gets replaced overnight, but a lot of things can be tracked. Even like inspections could be tracked on the blockchain. And so there would be transparency from a buyer and seller's side of things, and titles can be transferred via the blockchain instantly versus, 30 or 45 day closing period that we have today. So there's some advantages, I think, using technology. It's not there yet, but we're kind of pioneers in the space. So I'm sure there'll be others like us that come along and look at reinventing and utilizing blockchain within the industry. So,
would you also say, David, instead of markup, that there's just expenses that could be circumvented by using an NFT? I mean, if you weren't working with a real estate broker or a title company or different things like that, maybe more streamlined transaction?
I think the main advantage is liquidity of your investment and the fact that it can be smaller. So real estate traditionally is a very large investment for most people. It's the biggest investment they make typically. And when you take it into the blockchain and you fractionalize it, somebody could own a fraction of a dome and have some recurring income for maybe, let's just say around $1,500, might be one of the smaller fractions, but that would produce some ongoing income for that investment. And that's something you could add to your portfolio, and it might be kind of interesting. In addition, if you ever wanted to sell that, you simply go to an exchange like OpenSea and you sell that token, and you have instant liquidity there. So whereas I think the timeshare model, we are similar to the timeshare model. We've been compared to that, but the big downfall of that is that it's really challenging to resell your units once you've bought them. So you get sold on something that looks interesting, and then there's no real way and platform for you to resell those effectively. And they're tied to certain weeks, and there's all this complexity. So this simplifies it, and it makes it much more liquid for somebody that owns a YakDAO fractional ownership NFT.
Well, let's say I had an interest, David, and I have my ETH ready to go. And so after you close on your property and I decide to proceed, then that's just transferred to you guys. And then I have the NFT basically defines what my rights are, what my ownership is.
Correct. It's all written in the contract. That's what they call the smart contract. So there's no paperwork or legal documents that we need to exchange. So again, that's another sort of middle area transaction cost that we can avoid because it's all done via the smart contract that's tied to the NFT.
So a lot of this, we can rely on Web3, correct? I mean, as far as the technology and for everything to work and just to make it more specific and simplistic, something we don't really have in place yet, but I mean, I know it's working, and you're on the forefront of that.
Yeah, I mean, Web3 really isn't, it's just a way that we're manipulating and using the internet. It's still just the internet, right?
Gotcha.
It's just another version of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the NFT is a much more specific, well, the contract, all the specifics, that sort of thing, and in a blockchain format that lays out all the details.
Correct.
Okay. And you guys do them in the form of artwork, is that correct? And
we do, yeah. The motivation behind this was really, I saw a couple of projects that Links DAO, so they were buying a golf course, and they were doing fractional ownership of the golf course, and they had a real successful fundraise, but they just use membership cards. And then Fry's DAO is buying like fast food franchises as a DAO, same type of thing, membership ownership, and just membership cards. We felt like the yak, we chose a yak because they are the animal that takes you on the most amazing experiences. They're used for all the big base camps. And so that's
climbing Mount Everest, many of those things, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like the vehicle, the animal that takes you to your outdoors adventure. And so we thought that was kind of fun. And so, yeah, we commissioned an artist, and we've got 10,000 unique art pieces on this as well.
And so when you purchase the NFT, then it just has that look to it, or is that the art piece is the NFT with all the details?
The art piece you get the art, plus you get all the utility and details that are behind that. So yeah, it's a combination.
All right. And what is a mint date? I know you've got that rolling out here shortly.
Yeah, so we're minting on September 8th, and we're going to mint 30% of our supply. So around 3,000 of our NFTs will be released, and we're holding back the remainder. We'll strategically launch them as we look at additional properties that we want to acquire. We are also going to launch a token at some point, and that will just expand. We just believe we'll have more than 10,000 users eventually that are interested. Like Camp, for example, we have 2 million users on that platform. And so we just imagine that we'll need to expand past 10,000. We'll use the token to do that and add some governance to the DAO. But a benefit of why I'm mentioning that right now is that anybody that mints within 72 hours of September 8th mints a yak, you'll be whitelisted, and we're setting aside 2% of our token supply. So we're just going to airdrop that to our first backers of our concept. So
cool. Yeah. Kind of like a red light special.
A little bit, yeah. Just I've been in the startup phase quite a while, and like new projects are risky. So we recognize, we think we've de-risked a lot of our project just based on team experience and that we're asset backed. This isn't, there's a lot of stuff that's not hard asset backed. We have land as an asset back, which is about as good as it gets. So, yeah.
So mint date is similar to an IPO date.
Correct. Yep. So that's right. So you could go on OpenSea and buy a yak on September 8th. And if you want to follow along, we do have a website. It's yak.camp. And that's it's actually in the process of being updated right now. That just talks about the NFTs, but we're going to add in some of the experiences. And as you were mentioning before the call, I have shot quite a few YouTube videos, even demonstrating the domes, demonstrating the property itself that we're investing in first and foremost. And then the most active place that we kind of manage everything is called Discord. And Discord gives us the ability we have different channels. So we have, for example, a real estate channel. So if somebody from the community wants to drop in a property that we should take a look at, which is actually how we found the Brevard property, you can do that through the Discord channel.
What other locations are you looking at, David? You mentioned Colorado, your Brevard property, which is under contract. Mainly wilderness type area. I mean, obviously not in the middle of a metropolitan area or even close.
Yeah.
What other areas do you have on your radar?
So we originally looked at Salida, Colorado, really closely, and I think that's a good option for us. We also have looked at, there's a property for sale right next to Solitude in like Park City area. Utah. And so we definitely want to hit the mountain region of the country. The reason we chose Brevard first is cost. It was lower cost. Second was municipalities. So, if you want to develop a camping resort in Colorado or Utah, there's some red tape that you just need to work through with local municipalities. In North Carolina, you can kind of just buy land and put up whatever you want to do. So speed to market was something interesting for us. And that's why one of the reasons we chose there to start off.
I'm sure it's specific to the area, what the guidelines are, the regulations for the county entities, that sort of thing. What does your demographic look like? Do you say the most common folks you feel will be interested moving forward with you guys?
So right now I would say it's really interesting because we have an international audience right out of the gates. We have members that have invested already in the pre-sale from Australia, Africa, Asia, Europe, and North America. And so it's really, that's kind of the unique thing about crypto is it just expands your audience very quickly. So demographically speaking, I would say in the earliest stages, we are actually attracting a pretty sophisticated crypto investor, maybe somebody that's been working at a crypto hedge fund or has been in the industry for a little while, because we are very, very unique in that the utility that we're providing our user base, our members. And so I think that is appealing to somebody that's been in the space for a while. In fact, when we started, we applied Yak to 4 different NFT launch pads, they're called. This is when I kind of knew we had something, because all 4 gave us offers within 1 week. So we ended up working with Ferrum Network. They're kind of an East Coast based. Actually, they're remote, so they've got guys in quite a few staff in Utah as well. But they're a consultancy for blockchain projects and the development side of it. We're working with another one called Block Tech right now, and they do like more the legal side of things and all that kind of stuff. So
you mentioned internationally. Do you feel that is maybe 50% of your demographic are folks all over the country, or a lot of it is US based?
I would say right now 80% is in the US and 20% is international. Okay. But it's interesting because the folks that are international are investors. So whereas like we have, I would say, just more people interested in following us in the US, probably just because of our own demographics of being based here. But I would say when we look at the investment side, it might be closer to like 60-40 or something like that, US based.
Gotcha. So I do understand what you're talking about somewhat. And I'm kind of on the outside and not a sophisticated crypto person, but if I wanted more information, I can go to your website, learn more about Yakdo, which is what at this time it's
yak.camp.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yep. I had a couple more questions for you. How does the government and the SEC look at the future of crypto and NFT projects, do you think?
Yeah, I think they look at it as a risk, but they also look at it as a future technology that has to be adopted. And so I think like any financial instrument, there's always risk of bad performers. And so there's a lot of people in crypto that are worried about regulation and worried about, because, I think the way that the industry started, it was sort of like anti-establishment a bit. But I think as we get to the later stages of sort of adoption, regulation is really good for our industry because it just helps adoption. It keeps people safe and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm in favor of the government's looking at this and figuring out ways to work with these organizations, with DAOs, because it's really quite silly. What happens is entrepreneurs in the US, they're not going to stop building these things, and they just you can just domicile in another country, and that's more favorable right now. And so as an American, I think that's a risk to our country. Like, we're losing talent, we're losing startup capital and opportunity and jobs and that kind of stuff. And so more investment, more time. And as the government, I think, and our government, they want to embrace new technology. That's just that this is so fast and so quick and so obscure to traditional markets that there's got to be some real focus on it. And I think there has been, even in the last year, the government has put a lot more effort into figuring out how to work with it. I think we end up just seeing that evolve, and I think we end up seeing it be embraced. And I think there'll be some regulation around it in the future. Until then, you do play in a little bit of a gray area, but that's kind of the way it is with any new technology. Like, if we were talking about e-commerce back in the mid 90s, giving a credit card over the internet, that was a risky thing to do back then. And a lot of people did it. And now today we don't think twice about it. Amazon delivers everything to your door.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, David. I think as with the new technologies and new mindsets, that regulation gives people peace of mind and a comfort level, with things moving forward. And as you move into an area where it becomes more mainstream, obviously, you're way ahead of the curve in a lot of respects of what you're doing. I think the concept is really cool. I do have a grasp somewhat on how everything works, but certainly the domes and the different areas and just getting outside. I mean, living in this area, most people that live here love to get outside. I mean, we have wildlife all around and they enjoy their outdoor activities. So why wouldn't somebody want to be able to do that in different locations and maybe have an ownership interest and actually have some, cash flow coming out of that? So
absolutely.
So, well, is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't touch on?
I think we covered it all at the high level. We'd love for, any of your audience that's interested, check out yak.camp. And the more people that are passionate about the outdoors that are a part of what we're doing, that's really our mission is helping more people get outside and own outdoors properties. I think this is a really interesting, as we look at other areas that you could invest in. Recreational use real estate is sort of at the top of the list right now. If you look at like Camping World's had record sales quarters, first and second quarter this year. It's a pretty hot and desirable properties. So anyway, I think I've said enough about that, and love to have anybody that's passionate about real estate or especially outdoors recreation be a part of our community.
No, that's great. I appreciate it, Dave. And I would agree with you that people are enjoying getting outdoors, maybe more so now with the pandemic over. I know when you go to a lot of state parks in Colorado, there are reservations now required that weren't in the past because so many people want to participate. So I wish you the very best. And I appreciate you taking time to spend time with an old curmudgeon like me and give me some good insight into what you're up to.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
To the Foothills, a Colorado lifestyle and real estate podcast. On the podcast, I interview real estate experts, Colorado adventurers, and residents who enjoy the serenity and lifestyle of living in our mountain communities. Tune in each week for a conversation that explores the ins and outs of buying the perfect mountain home or selling your dream home, and catch a glimpse into the Colorado lifestyle that's a part of you.